Okay, tell me if this has happened to you. You buy a new couch. Nice one. Maybe it's that mid-century modern piece you've been eyeing for months. You get it delivered, you're excited, you set it up in your living room, you step back, you admire it, and then something weird happens. You look at the coffee table next to it and think, wow, that coffee table looks like garbage now. So you buy a new coffee table. Then the rug underneath looks faded and worn compared to everything else, so you replace the rug. Then the lamp in the corner doesn't match anymore. Then the curtains feel wrong. Then the wall art looks cheap, and before you know it, you've spent $4,000 because you bought a $700 couch. And here's the part that really messes with people. At no point during that entire process did you feel like you were being irresponsible. Every single purchase felt logical. Every single one felt like the rational next step. You weren't being reckless. You were just making things match. That right there is one of the most dangerous spending patterns in personal finance, and almost nobody talks about it. It has a name. It's called the Diderot Effect. And once you understand how it works, you will start seeing it absolutely everywhere. In your wardrobe, in your kitchen, in your car, in your tech, in your entire lifestyle. And more importantly, you'll finally understand why you keep spending money even when you genuinely, sincerely promised yourself you wouldn't. My name is Billy, and I spend way too much time thinking about the psychology of why we spend money we don't have. If you're someone who feels like no matter how many times you set a budget or tell yourself this is the last thing I'm buying, you somehow always end up spending more than you planned, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because today we're going to break down the Diderot effect from every angle. The psychology, the math, the real-world examples, and most importantly, the specific strategies you can use starting today to break the cycle. Because I'm going to be honest with you, this one effect, this one cognitive pattern is silently responsible for tens of thousands of dollars of unnecessary spending over the course of an average person's lifetime. And the worst part, most people don't even know it's happening to them. Let's get into it. So let me give you some context because the history behind this is actually fascinating and it makes the whole concept click. The Diderot effect is named after Denis Diderot, an 18th century French philosopher. Now, Diderot was not a wealthy man. For most of his life, he was basically broke. He was brilliant. The guy co-founded the Encyclopédie, which was one of the most important publications in Western history, but he was terrible with money. Classic, right? Then one day, he got lucky. Catherine the Great, the Empress of Russia, bought his personal library for a huge sum of money. Overnight, Diderot went from struggling to having more cash than he'd ever seen in his life. And what did he do? He bought a beautiful new scarlet robe, a gorgeous, luxurious dressing gown, and here's where it gets interesting. He put the robe on, looked around his study, and suddenly everything else in the room looked shabby. His old chair didn't match the elegance of the robe. His desk felt inadequate. His bookshelves looked plain. His curtains, his rug, his writing instruments, everything suddenly felt beneath him. So he started upgrading everything, one by one, piece by piece, and he spent himself right back into debt. He actually wrote an essay about it. The title, and I love this, roughly translates to Regrets on Parting with My Old Dressing Gown. He literally wrote about how a single beautiful robe ruined his financial life. That was in 1772. And here we are in 2026, and the exact same psychological trap is draining people's bank accounts faster than ever before. Except now, it's not a robe triggering the spiral, it's an iPhone, it's a car lease, it's a kitchen renovation, it's a pair of sneakers. Look, the reason this is so much more dangerous today than it was in Diderot's time is because of the sheer volume of purchasing decisions we make and the speed at which we can make them. Here's a stat that blew my mind. According to a February 2026 report from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, U.S. personal consumption expenditures hit approximately $20.2 trillion on an annualized basis in Q4 of 2025. That number is up roughly 5.3% from the year prior. Americans are spending more than ever, and a Bankrate survey from January 2026 found that 27% of adults say they have no emergency savings at all. Zero. Another 23% say they have some, but less than what would cover 3 months of expenses. So people are spending more and saving less. And a huge underappreciated reason for that is the Diderot effect operating on autopilot in the background of their lives. Let me give you a modern example that I guarantee most of you will relate to. You upgrade your phone. Let's say you go from an older iPhone to the new iPhone 17 Pro. That's what, $1,199 for the base model right now? Okay, fine. But then you realize your old case doesn't fit. New case, $59. Then you see that the new phone has better audio capabilities and your old earbuds aren't cutting it anymore. AirPods Pro 3, $279. Then you think, you know what? I should get a MagSafe charger so I can take full advantage of the wireless charging. That's another $39 to $79 depending on the brand. Then your old Apple Watch feels slow in comparison, so you start thinking about upgrading that. Then your laptop is 3 years old and doesn't work as seamlessly with the new ecosystem, so you start eyeing the MacBook Air M4. You walked into the store planning to spend $1,199. You walked out having committed to, or at least mentally begun planning, $3,500 to $4,800 in total spending. And at every step, every single purchase felt like it made sense. That's the Diderot Effect. Here's the thing. Apple knows this. Samsung knows this. Every major consumer brand knows this. Why do you think they build ecosystems? Why do you think everything is designed to integrate with everything else? It's not just about convenience. It's about engineering a Diderot spiral. One purchase creates a gravitational pull toward the next purchase and the next and the next. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Billy, but I'm not spending thousands of dollars every time I buy a phone. You're exaggerating. Am I? Let's actually run the numbers because this is where it gets really eye-opening. The average American household spends about $72,967 per year on total consumption, according to the latest full-year data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Expenditure Survey, updated in late 2025. Now, researchers who study the Diderot Effect estimate, and this is conservative, that approximately 15 to 25% of non-essential consumer spending is driven by cascading purchases. Things you didn't plan to buy, but bought because something else you acquired made them feel necessary. Let's take the low end, 15%. If we conservatively say that $30,000 of that $72,967 is discretionary, meaning it's not your rent, not your utilities, not your basic groceries, not your insurance, then 15% of $30,000 is $4,500 a year in Diderot-driven spending. Spending that you didn't plan. Spending that you wouldn't have done if the initial purchase hadn't triggered the cascade. $4,500 a year. Let's see what that looks like over time. If you took that $4,500 every year and instead invested it in a broad market index fund, let's use the S&P 500's historical average annual return of roughly 10%. Here's what happens. After 10 years, approximately $78,281. After 20 years, approximately $283,635. After 30 years, approximately $822,470. Let me just say that one more time so it sinks in. The cascade spending triggered by the Diderot effect, just the conservative estimate, could cost the average person over $800,000 in potential wealth over a 30-year career. Over 800 grand gone. Not because you were wildly irresponsible, not because you were buying Ferraris and Rolexes, but because you bought a new desk and then thought the chair didn't match. That's the part that kills me. This isn't about extravagance. This is about the quiet, seemingly reasonable, almost invisible bleeding of money that happens purchase after purchase after purchase. And if you use the 25% estimate, we're talking about $7,500 a year. Over 30 years at 10%, that's roughly $1.37 million. Let that sit with you. So why does this happen? Why can't we just buy one thing and stop? Here's what most people don't realize. The Diderot effect isn't really about stuff. It's about identity. When you buy something new, especially something that feels like an upgrade, your brain doesn't just process it as a transaction. It processes it as a statement about who you are. That new couch isn't just a couch. It's a signal to yourself and to others that you're the kind of person who has a nice living room. You're someone with taste. You're moving up. And once your brain adopts that upgraded identity, everything around you that doesn't match that identity creates what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. That feeling of discomfort when your environment doesn't align with your self-image. Your brain literally cannot tolerate the mismatch. The worn-out coffee table next to the beautiful new couch isn't just an aesthetic problem. It's an identity threat, and your brain will push you hard to resolve that discomfort by upgrading everything else to match. This is why the Diderot effect hits hardest during life transitions. You get a new job, Suddenly, your old wardrobe feels inadequate for the new you. A 2025 survey by Salary Finance found that 43% of workers admitted to spending more on clothing, meals, and lifestyle expenses within the first 3 months of starting a new job, even before their first paycheck reflected the raise. You move into a new apartment. Suddenly, all your old furniture feels like it belongs to the previous version of you. You start dating someone new. Suddenly, your car, your clothes, your apartment all need to reflect this better, more attractive version of yourself. Here's another psychological layer that makes this worse. It's called the fresh start effect, and it's been well documented in behavioral economics research. When people experience a new beginning, a new year, a new job, a new home, a new relationship, they feel a heightened motivation to reinvent themselves. And in a consumer culture, reinventing yourself almost always means buying new things. Now, layer on top of that the social comparison that's baked into platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. A January 2026 survey by Credit Karma found that 41% of Gen Z and 35% of millennials admitted to making purchases specifically because they saw someone else's lifestyle online that made their own feel inadequate. That's the Diderot Effect being triggered not by your own purchase, but by someone else's. You see someone's aesthetic home setup on a TikTok reel, and suddenly your perfectly functional apartment feels wrong. The comparison is the trigger. The cascade follows. This is where it gets really interesting, because once you understand the Diderot effect, you start to see how deliberately certain industries are designed to exploit it. Fast fashion? The entire business model is Diderot driven. You buy one trendy piece and suddenly 3 other things in your closet don't go with it, so you buy more. Then next season, the trend shifts and the cycle resets. Shein alone shipped approximately $8.5 billion worth of product globally in 2025. That's not because people need more clothes, it's because every new purchase makes the old ones feel obsolete. Home improvement and furniture, same thing. The average American kitchen renovation costs between $28,000 and $40,000, according to Angie's 2026 State of Home Spending Report. But most of those projects start as something small. A new backsplash, a new faucet, then the countertops need to match. Then the cabinets look dated, then the appliances are the wrong color, then the flooring clashes, one tile becomes a $35,000 gut job. The automobile industry, look, nobody just buys a car anymore. You buy the car, then you need the upgraded floor mats, the window tinting, the dash cam, the ceramic coating, the roof rack, the premium sound system upgrade, the leather seat covers. According to a 2025 Edmunds report, the average car buyer spends an additional $4,200 in accessories and add-ons within the first year of ownership. The car is the trigger purchase. Everything else is the cascade. And the fitness industry, oh man, don't even get me started. You buy a Peloton, then you need the cycling shoes, then you need the heart rate monitor, then you need the workout mat for the off-bike workouts, then you need the weights, then you need the protein powder, the shaker bottle, the meal prep containers, the workout clothes. You went from wanting to get in shape to spending $3,000 on an entire lifestyle identity shift. And again, at every step, it felt completely rational. All right, so now that I've thoroughly depressed you about how much money this invisible force has been siphoning out of your accounts, let's talk about what you actually do about it. Because here's the good news. Once you see the Diderot effect, you can fight it, but you need specific strategies, not just willpower. Willpower doesn't work against cognitive biases. Systems do. Strategy number 1, impose a cascade freeze. Here's how it works. Anytime you make a significant purchase, let's say anything over $100, you impose a 30-day freeze on any related purchases. You buy a new desk? Great. You're not allowed to buy a new chair, a new monitor arm, a new desk lamp, or anything else for that space for 30 days. No exceptions. What this does is it breaks the momentum of the cascade because the Diderot effect relies on urgency, that immediate feeling of this doesn't match, I need to fix it right now. If you force yourself to wait, that urgency fades dramatically. After 30 days, most of those essential secondary purchases feel a lot less essential. Strategy number 2, define your enough before you buy. Before any significant purchase, literally write it down on paper or in your phone's notes app, exactly what you're buying thing and a commitment that it's the only purchase in this category for a defined period. I'm buying a new couch. This is the only living room purchase I'm making for the next 6 months. Everything else stays as is. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but the act of explicitly defining boundaries before the dopamine hit of the new purchase is incredibly powerful. You're essentially pre-committing your future self to a decision while your rational brain is still in control. Strategy number 3, practice what I call selective downgrading. This one's counterintuitive, so hear me out. Instead of upgrading things to match your new purchase, deliberately keep at least one thing in the environment slightly mismatched. I know that sounds crazy, but there's a purpose. When you force yourself to tolerate a small amount of aesthetic mismatch, you're training your brain to be comfortable with imperfection. You're building resistance to the cognitive dissonance that drives the cascade. Over time, this reduces the emotional pull of the Diderot Effect significantly. Strategy number 4, calculate the true cascade cost before buying the trigger item. This is probably the most practical one. Before you buy something, sit down and honestly estimate the total cascade cost. Not just the price of the item, but every secondary purchase it's likely to trigger. Be honest with yourself. You know what's going to happen. If you buy that new gaming PC, you know you're going to want a new monitor, a new desk, a new chair, a new headset, new peripherals. Price all of it out. Write down the total number. If the trigger item is $1,500, but the true cascade cost is $4,000, you need to evaluate whether you're actually willing to spend $4,000 because that's what you're really signing up for. Strategy number 5, curate based on what you have, not what you want. This is a mindset shift. Most people shop by imagining an ideal version of their life and then buying toward it. What would my dream office look like? What would my ideal wardrobe look like? That approach is a Diderot machine. It guarantees an endless cascade because there's always a gap between where you are and the imagined ideal. Instead, flip it. Look at what you already own and build around it. Don't ask what would look amazing in this room. Ask, what do I already have that works and how can I make the most of it? This one shift collapses the gap between identity and environment, which eliminates the primary trigger for cascade spending. Strategy number 6, automate the diversion. Here's a concrete tactic. Set up an automatic transfer to a savings or investment account that equals a percentage, I'd suggest 50% of any discretionary purchase over $200. So if you buy a $500 item, $250 automatically gets moved into your investment account. You can set this up manually or use apps like Capital or set custom rules through your bank. What this does is it creates a financial counterweight to every trigger purchase. Yes, you spent $500 on the thing, but you also just invested $250 in your future. It doesn't prevent the purchase, but it makes every purchase simultaneously an act of wealth building. And psychologically, knowing that every discretionary purchase triggers an automatic investment makes you more deliberate about what you buy. Look, I want to zoom out for a second because this is about more than just saving a few $1,000s a year. Although, as we calculated, over 30 years, it's potentially hundreds of thousands or even over $1 million. So let's not minimize that. But the deeper issue with the Diderot effect is that it keeps you on what I call the lifestyle treadmill. You're running faster and faster, earning more, spending more, but you're never actually getting anywhere. You're never building real wealth. You're never creating real financial security. You're just constantly upgrading the surface of your life while the foundation stays shaky. And here's the part that genuinely frustrates me. The people who fall hardest into the Diderot trap are usually not financially illiterate. They're often smart, educated, hardworking people who earn decent incomes. The problem isn't that they don't know how money works. The problem is that they don't understand how their own brain works. They don't see the invisible psychological currents pulling them from one purchase to the next. They think every spending decision is rational because it feels rational in the moment, but it's not rational. It's a cascade. It's a pattern and it's predictable. A 2026 study published in the Journal of Consumer Psychology confirmed something researchers have suspected for years, that cascade spending patterns are remarkably consistent across income levels. Whether someone makes $45,000 or $450,000, the Diderot effect operates the same way. Higher income people don't escape it. They just cascade at higher price points. Instead of a $700 couch triggering $4,000 in spending, it's a $15,000 kitchen island triggering $70,000 in renovations. The ratios stay roughly the same. The psychology is identical. This is why you hear about people making $200,000, $300,000, even $500,000 a year and still living paycheck to paycheck. It's not because they're stupid. It's because every raise, every bonus, every windfall triggers a new cascade. New income creates a new identity, which creates new needs, which creates new spending, which absorbs the new income completely. The hamster wheel just gets more expensive. So here's what I want you to take away from this video. The Diderot Effect is real. It's not some obscure academic theory. It's actively shaping your financial life right now, whether you realize it or not. Every time you buy something and then feel that subtle pull, that little voice saying, well, now I need to upgrade this too. That's it. That's the effect in action. And the beautiful thing is, now that you know its name, now that you understand how it works, you have power over it. You can see it coming. You can pause. You can ask yourself, am I buying this because I genuinely need it or because my last purchase created a feeling of mismatch that my brain is desperate to resolve? That one question, asked consistently, can save you tens of thousands of dollars over the next decade, possibly hundreds of thousands over your lifetime. And more than the money, it can free you from the exhausting cycle of always needing more, always feeling like what you have isn't quite enough, always chasing an idealized version of your life that keeps moving just out of reach. You don't need everything to match. You don't need your entire life to be aesthetically cohesive. You don't need every part of your world to reflect the same level of upgrade. What you need is financial security. What you need is options. What you need is the peace of mind that comes from knowing your money is working for your future, not being drained by a 300-year-old psychological trap that a French philosopher already warned us about. Diderot literally wrote the cautionary tale in 1772. He told us exactly what happened. He told us how one robe destroyed his finances. The lesson has been sitting there for over 250 years. Let's finally learn it. If this video helped you see your spending differently, hit that subscribe button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. We all know somebody who buys one thing and ends up renovating their entire life. Drop a comment below and tell me, what was your biggest Diderot spiral? What was the one purchase that triggered a cascade you didn't see coming? I genuinely want to hear your stories because I think we all learn from each other's experiences. I'll see you in the next one.